In January of this year, salmonella-tainted peanut products sickened over 500 people and were linked to 8 deaths. There was a nationwide recall of over 125 products because peanut paste is found in everything from candy and cookies to pet food and energy snacks. Investigators tracked the salmonella outbreak to Peanut Corporation of America, a factory in Blakely, Georgia. It makes peanut butter for institutions like schools and nursing homes and peanut paste for other companies like Kellogg's. The recent outbreak has raised some alarming questions about food safety. Andrew Martin covers the food industry for the New York Times.
I think we've all come to know that you got to cook a hamburger to 160 degrees, or else you might get E. coli. That chicken has to be cooked thoroughly, or you could get salmonella. That eggs, raw eggs are dangerous. But peanut butter, my God, we eat peanut butter all the time. When you're kids, my kids eat peanut butter every day. It's just not something that you sort of think of as a dangerous product.
And there's a growing sense in Washington that there is something deeply wrong with the Food and Drug Administration's oversight of this food supply.
I think that the F.D.A. has not been able to catch some of these things as quickly as I expect them to catch. And so we're going to be doing a complete review of F.D.A. operations.
So where did the system break down?
I mean, there's many places the system broke down. Starting with the company itself. Inspectors can't walk into plants and see salmonella, or they can't see E. coli. They're microscopic. But what they can see is the most basic hygiene problems. And from what we know now, from what the FDA has revealed, is that this plant had some very serious problems in terms of basic cleanliness. Roaches crawling all over with, slime in the conveyor belts, mold on the floors. And you think, how could it be that people walk through the same plant and didn't see some of this stuff?
In addition, the company hired its own inspectors who time after time gave it a superior rating.
It's obviously a very good question how a plant with this serious of problems could have continually passed audits. But it raises very serious questions in my mind about the sort of utility of these audits.
What's worse, in more than one instance, Peanut Corporation of America tested their products for salmonella and got positive results. And when retests came up clean, the company still sent the products out.
The federal government is conducting a criminal investigation of this company. I don't know if they broke the law, but the fact is, at least according to the FDA, they had positive salmonella tests and they sent the product out anyway. In this case, self-regulation didn't work. Where was the F.D.A.? I mean, ultimately, you need to have a system of checks and balances. And, if the company's not doing it, if the auditors aren't doing it, if the government's not doing it, well, then this is what you get.
Gardner Harris covers the Food and Drug Administration in Washington, D.C. He says the agency is overwhelmed by the vastness of its duties, and it has little authority to regulate.
In fact, there are 12 distinct federal agencies with some oversight power over food. And this scattered approach and regulatory authority over food, according to most outside observers, is one of the principal reasons that food oversight has been very poor in this country. For instance, F.D.A. oversees cheese pizzas, USDA oversees meat pizzas, F.D.A. oversees closed sandwiches, USDA oversees open sandwiches. And the FDA's oversight of drugs, for instance, is very different than its oversight of food, although I think in the public's mind we really sort of mix these up. So in its oversight of drugs, for instance, FDA assumes that a drug is unsafe unless a drug maker proves through considerable research that it is safe. On the food side, just the opposite happens, actually. Food manufacturers get the assumption that their product is safe, and it takes the FDA to prove that it is unsafe for the FDA to be able to do anything. So the result is that FDA has very little authority in the food area. That issue of authority has become an important part of this debate, and nearly all of the legislative reform proposals would give FDA much more authority to do precisely that, which is to do sort of preventive shutdowns of places they think may be producing contaminated products.
Several members of Congress have proposed making significant changes at the FDA.
There is an important group of legislators who believe essentially that all FDA needs is more money and more authority, and frankly a little more guts, and it could do a much better job overseeing food. But there's another group of legislators, and they are powerful, who believe fundamentally that FDA is primarily a drug and device approval agency, and that food has always been a stepchild at FDA and always will be. And so that their answer really is to split off food from FDA and create its own institute. This scare involves a lot of children, and we have an administration now that I think is amenable to these regulatory changes in ways that the Bush administration wasn't.
At bare minimum, we should be able to count on our government keeping our kids safe when they eat peanut butter. That's what Sasha eats for lunch, probably 3 times a week. And I don't want to have to worry about whether she's going to get sick as a consequence of having her lunch.
But the withdrawal of Senator Tom Daschle's nomination for Health Secretary puts a damper on a quick resolution.
Nothing major is going to happen at FDA until the Obama administration gets its leadership in place. I don't think anybody really thinks that any major legislation on FDA is going to pass before the summer.